Hello and welcome to Peace at Home Parenting. I'm Ruth Freeman, licensed clinical social worker and founder of Peace at Home. Today we're having an informal conversation, a quick lunchtime connection, talking about the special education journey. And I'm really delighted to be here with Andrea Brinnel, a Peace at Home teacher and a very seasoned and inspiring educator. Andrea, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Andrea Brinnel. I am a recent retiree from the Connecticut State Department of Education, where I worked in the Bureau of Special Education.
Thank you. So this is an opportunity for parents to ask questions, and parents and caregivers to ask questions and inquire. I I want to start our conversation, Andrea, by asking you um, a little bit about how can parents be really helpful to their children in the special ed journey, but also it seems like when I talk to parents about this, when I listen to parents about this, it seems like there's kind of a tension between feeling like you're being a good advocate for your child and at the same time truly partnering with educators. And it's like walking that balanced line. Can you just say a few words about the behaviors and things that and approaches that parents use that seem to get the best outcomes for their kids and work best in terms of partnerships with the schools? Could you just talk about that a little bit in general?
Sure. And I totally get what you're saying, Ruth. I think parents are often very conflicted with, they don't want to be perceived as being negative or pushing too hard or being the enemy when it comes to planning with their child. I think that it starts at the very beginning. When a child is referred for a special education evaluation, being part of the team and having that expectation that you're really a part of that IEP team and that referral team. And what that can mean is going in with sort of that attitude that you are part of the team, but in a really positive way, that you really want to work together with the people in the school. And you're all looking for the same thing. You're all looking for a child to do well and to get what they need to be a successful learner. And I think some of that comes in with, it's hard not to be intimidated when you walk into a room full of strangers and they're the experts in the field, but remembering that you're the expert on your child. Always remember that you are the expert on your own child, and also being prepared. Things like for an evaluation team meeting, coming in with questions. What is it you want to know? Not just what, I want a reading evaluation. It's what do I want to know about my child's reading? And coming in and being knowledgeable about what you're going to be looking for to look for if your child has a disability. And it could be complex. It could be, something very specific is being an issue, or it could be general. It could be, I want to know if my child has a disability in the area of reading. But going in with sort of that mindset that you're a valuable part of the team and you are the expert, and that can be done in a really positive way. Going in sort of loaded for bear can set a really negative tone on either side. So it really is developing. The first boss I ever had in education, I walked into her office the first day and she said, the three most important words you have to remember in education are relationships, relationships, and relationships. And that has carried me, I think, in good stead over the past 35 or so years.
And that's what we tell parents too. I mean, it's about their relationships with their kids too. I mean, relationships are the foundation of all in some ways. So I want to remind folks that you can raise your hand or talk with us and or send us a chat at any time. Even if one of us is speaking, just don't be polite, send us a chat. I want to start with the hardest question that we just received in advance of this session, Andrea, and this is it. We rely on the school department telling us what our kids should be achieving, and I feel like a lot is getting missed simply because we don't know what we should be asking. Now, I think there's two parts to this question. The school department tells us what our kids should be achieving. I think there's also the part of what our kids need. And maybe this parent is thinking about both of those. And then I guess there's also, parents have ideas about what we want our kids to achieve. So this is, I don't know, this seems like a complex question, but I bet you can sort it out, Andrea.
Well, it is. It's a really, really complex question. I think if you look at it from, I guess, a very 30,000 feet view, and knowing the expectations for children in schools, being a parent and being familiar with the learning standards for your child. In most school districts, that's going to be the Common Core standards and the National Science standards, for instance. It doesn't mean you're an expert in them, but having a general idea that they exist and sort of what they are and where they're headed really helps, I think, inform you as the expert on your child about what children should know and be able to do at the grade level they're at. I know as a parent, I sometimes had unreasonable expectations for my child, one way or the other. Either they were a little too low or they were a little too high. And being able to sort of level set and know what the expectations are, again, what children should know and be able to do at a particular grade, can be really, really helpful. And especially if you're a new parent and you don't have another child that sort of has gone through the district and you have a little bit of familiarity about what's being taught and what's being learned, it's really helpful as far as level setting. And I think you also have to understand that if your child does have a disability and does have an IEP, your children's goals and objectives and learning expectations are supposed to be aligned to general education, and general education is aligned to those standards. And I always joke about everything in life is sort of that children's book, Give a Mouse a Cookie, that it really is a give a mouse a cookie situation. But if I had to choose the one place to start, what the cookie is before you get the glass of milk, it would really be to have some kind of familiarity with those standards. I think that's helpful. And then the part, Ruth, about knowing how well your child is doing, that can be pretty complicated, because if your child is on an IEP, well, if they're not on an IEP too, teachers are typically doing something called progress monitoring. And as a parent, knowing that this progress monitoring is happening and that they're collecting data on your child's progress, you should be able to ask the teacher to look at the data and to go over the data with you. That doesn't mean you're not taking the teacher's word for how well the child is doing, but it will sort of help you wrap your head around all of the complicated parts of what your child is learning and what they know and what they're being expected to know. So never be afraid to say, I understand, I'm glad that my child is doing really well. Can you show me, the data that you've collected with regard to their reading or their math skills? Because I want to better understand the skills that they're learning. So that speaks to both parts. That speaks to getting the information you need as a parent in order to advocate for your child, and also building relationships, because part of it is how you ask.
So speaking of relationships, I was interested when you articulated, which I never thought about before, but I think you said there are 3 areas where children may need support. One is academic, that's the obvious one, but they also may need additional support around social emotional development. Is there a third one, or did I imagine that? Are those the two?
I think those are the 2 areas where we really talk about, is academics and social and emotional skills. And I don't like these terms, but you will hear them often in schools, where you'll hear about hard skill, the hard skills, which are the academics, and the soft skills, which are social and emotional. I think they're all equally important. I think you need to think about people in general as whole person, and they're the sum of their parts. One part is not more important than the other.
Yeah, good. For sure. Really, when you look at, life success, those soft skills are very, 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 very important. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people with very good hard skills and not such good soft skills, and their lives can go off the rails pretty easily.
Well, there was actually some research done, and I apologize for not being able to give you the citation, but there was research done with people coming right out of school and going to the workforce. And the biggest complaint employers had were all about executive functioning skills, sort of that air traffic control system in people's brains that gets you to work on time, that keeps you organized, that helps you get along well with peers and work in a group. So I think you're absolutely right that we have to make sure that you have content, you learn how to read, you learn how to do math, but you also have to learn how to get along with others, how to be part of a group. That the importance of having a good work ethic and showing up on time, those are really important skills.
So that phrase, executive function, comes up very often in both educational settings and in what we're hearing from parents. They don't use that language, but that's what we're hearing from parents. My experience is that parents can easily mistake messages from school to think they should become their children's executive function. And what I mean by that is, and I'm hoping you're going to define that a little more for us, flesh it out, the definition, because I often, the teacher will say he hasn't been doing his homework, and then the parent starts to be the homework police, and it doesn't seem like we've really solved a problem here. So could you define executive function a little more, and then talk a little bit about how we support it in our kids and how schools support it in their kids, and address the issue of when the parent falls into becoming that? I know it's a big question, but I know you understand what I'm saying.
Sure. I think we're hearing a lot more about executive function than we ever have before. I think that is, I don't know, maybe one of the silver linings for everything that we experienced during the pandemic is that was elevated, that we have an understanding about how important that is. And something like executive functioning really can be intentionally taught both at home and at school. And what executive functioning is, to me, the easiest way to think about it, again, is that air traffic control system, but it's in your brain. It's what helps keep you organized. It is what gives you, the academics refer to it as cognitive flexibility. So you can solve problems. You don't get stuck someplace and not be able to move forward because you have that cognitive flexibility. And a lot of that really starts when we have very young children. Strategies that parents can do at home to help increase those executive functioning skills with their youngest children are let them do a lot of very deep imaginative play and try on different roles. That allows them to understand how different parts of those their executive functioning works, and it also helps them with organization and a better understanding of sort of the world in general. But there's a lot of research right now that shows that really deep, imaginative, sustained play, the stuff that we did when we were kids, we played dress up and pretend and all of those things, and we did it for hours, is really, really helpful. So giving your child those opportunities to be able to do that and pretend that they are the firefighter or pretend that they are the pizza maker really is helpful for developing those skills. Think about if you are, let's say you are the pizza maker, you're pretending you have a pizza shop. You have to organize all of your ingredients. You have to understand waiting your turn to put the pizza in the oven. You need to be able to understand having that reciprocal conversation with the person ordering the pizza. There's a lot of skills to unpack there. And then Ruth, what you talked about parents becoming the air traffic control system, I think when kids are little, we really are the kids' air traffic control system, and we're intentionally teaching them how to use theirs. And as kids get older, giving them choices. So I do agree that parents have a role in providing a place for kiddos to do homework in a time, but giving them some autonomy. Like, do you want to do your homework right now when you get home from school? Some kids want to do it, get it done with, or should we set aside an hour after dinner? And then, do you do better listening to music while you do your homework? Or do you need it to be really quiet? And let's find a space that works for you. I think that giving children, even pretty young children, early elementary children, some autonomy in those decisions helps them own that air traffic control system and helps them make good decisions. And you don't have to offer them any choice, like, when do you want to do your homework? And they say, I don't want to. It's more, do you want to do it after school, or would you prefer to do it after dinner? And that way they're making good choices. They're working on their organizational skills, but you're not giving them the chance to make a bad choice.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I never attached this to executive functioning, although I hear it all the time. But, we're often encouraging parents to have weekly meetings and check in on how chores are going and check in on making family plans. And we find that even talking to kids about what's going to help you remember to take out the trash, and kids will often come up with consequences that are really harsh. But, inviting them to think about what's going to work, thinking ahead about what works and what their preferences, and that's kind of executive functioning, right? Those negotiations, and kids are much more likely to carry out agreements they make in collaboration. But even the negotiation you're having with them is helping develop executive functioning from what you're just,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's helping them be organized and helping them buy into it and understanding that there are a lot of moving parts here. You have some choices to make. And again, that helps build their cognitive flexibility. Let's solve the problem is you're not getting your homework done. Let's sit down and figure out how we can solve this
It's gonna
problem.
help. Yeah.
Yep.
And those problem solving skills and engaging. And often, parents often give kids solutions. They think that's teaching problem solving, but it is not. And inviting kids, what's the solution to this? What's going to help you? And also, those conversations sometimes get you to the bottom of things. Like, it might be that the child actually doesn't understand certain concepts and ideas and needs some help that someone hasn't seen yet. The teacher may not have noticed it, you may not have, but whenever I have to read something, I just get really worried inside. If you're listening carefully, you're, so what's that about? Help me understand that. And then when you talk with the child and the teacher together and you describe that detail, it may tell the teacher something that they may not have observed. So this is all part of the collaborative process, and you're teaching your kids executive functioning by doing this process. That's the part that I think is so important. So I want to remind folks that we will probably go until about 12 more minutes, I'm guessing. If you have questions, now's the time to ask them. Raise your hand, send us a chat. We would love to hear from you. We have a question about what if my child is on a 504 plan or an IEP, and parents hear from the child that their teacher isn't providing the accommodation that the parent heard in the planning meeting. Now, of course, we have a reporting thing here, how accurate is the reporting, but can you help us think about how parents respond to that from a child and where to go with that?
Well, I think your point is excellent, Ruth. I've been in many situations where a parent calls the teacher and is very angry about the accommodation not being provided. And it really is an interpretation issue as opposed to it not happening. So again, I would go back to relationships and I would reach out to the teacher and say, my child came home today and in their IEP or 504, it says that they're supposed to be, seated at the front of the classroom. And they said they were seated at the back of the classroom, and having that conversation, because it could be, we were in groups and I was circulating around there really was no front to the classroom that day because I was circulating. It wasn't a lesson that I was at the front. Or it could have been the teacher forgot to make the accommodation, or the teacher chose not to, which I hope doesn't happen very often. So I would start at that point. See if you can get to sort of the bottom of the story. Was it really or really not? I would say, though, that if you find out your child's IEP or 504 plan is not being provided as it's written, that deserves a very, serious conversation. First with the teacher to find out why. I can't think of a whole lot of good reasons why it wouldn't be provided, but perhaps there is. The circumstance might have been such, but if you find out, for instance, a terrible reason for accommodation not to be provided is because that just wouldn't have been fair, I couldn't do that for your child because I couldn't do it for everyone. So this is a little bit flip, but my response to that with teachers has been, so what you're telling me is that if Ruth has a heart attack, you can't give her CPR because you can't give everybody else in the room CPR. Everybody doesn't need CPR. Ruth needs it.
That's a great metaphor.
So, that's the kind of conversation. Not everybody understands what equity is. They confuse equity with equality. Equity is everyone gets what they need. Equality means everybody gets the same. We want equity in the classroom. And then if you find talking with the teacher doesn't get you to that equity and legally what your child is entitled to, if it's a 504 issue, that becomes a civil rights issue, and you can deal with it through the school at first. I would always encourage you to go to the teacher, to the principal, and go through sort of that chain of command, and then go to the director of special ed if you have to, go up that chain of command. You also have the option of making a report to the Office of Civil Rights if it gets to that point. Things aren't pretty at that point. You're not developing relationships at that point. So I would save that for, this is the last result, the last possible way I could deal with this. And then if it's an IEP issue, your child is also covered under section 504. It is a civil rights issue, but there is going to be some kind of a complaint process. Again, go through the chain of command in your district, try to keep those good relationships. If that doesn't work, then there is a complaint process through your state Department of Education that you can follow. And in every single state, there is a parent information and training entity that it's called the PIT, that you can Google who the parent and training entity is in your state, and they can provide you support free of charge to help you navigate something like this.
I want to remind you all that anything that Andrea is describing that you think of later and realize you have a question, you can always reach out to us at solutions@peaceathomeparenting.com, and you'll be able to reach Andrea or me, or what happens when you email us at solutions@peaceathomeparenting.com, you reach our parent guides. They're parents just like you, and they will get you answers. In addition, Andrea will be teaching some live classes for us at Peace at Home. We have the next class coming up is in April, right?
April 12th, I believe.
And that class is that you have concerns about your child, and I have concerns about my child functioning in school. What should I do? Mm-hmm. And that isn't just a conversation. That's a learning opportunity. So don't hesitate to jump on the schedule, or just email us and we'll tell you exactly how to get into Andrea's upcoming classes. So Andrea, if someone refers their child for an evaluation, they're concerned that they're not doing well in school, they refer them for an evaluation, and the school says the child is not eligible for any special services, what can they do? Like, what happens then?
That can be really difficult, because the first thing you have to understand is that if your child is not eligible for an IEP or for a 504 plan, it means there was no disability that was determined by that team. So that's good news. That doesn't always help, but my child is still not doing well in a particular area. If you really feel strongly that your child does have a disability and the district did not identify it, you can request an independent evaluation at the district's cost for any evaluation that you disagree with. The district, there are very specific requirements for that, and a list. It's possible the district may give you a list of different providers that they would like you to entertain using. You can go out and find your own provider, but then there are a lot of technicalities with that. But you are entitled to an independent evaluation at the district's cost if you disagree with their evaluations. If you agree with their evaluations, which happens more often than not, your child may not have a disability. That doesn't mean they're not struggling. It's really having a conversation then with the school about what supports they have through general education, whether it's extra reading help, extra math help. In different states, it's called different things. In general, the word that you might hear is response to intervention. If you're in Massachusetts, you might hear multi-tiered systems of support. In Connecticut, you will hear scientifically research-based instruction. So they called all different things in different states. The big brand is RTI, response to intervention, and that's a tiered approach to support in general education. So having a conversation to find out how that tiered support works. And just in a nutshell, that means everybody is getting good basic instruction. That's the bottom of the pyramid. Then next would be some additional, typically group supports for students. It could be an extra reading group. It could be some additional math supports. And then the supports get more intensive in general ed until it gets to sort of individual intensive supports through general education. So that's really where you should look through general ed to see what supports are available there. But I guess the good news is your child may need some additional, more intensive instruction, but the team has determined your child does not have a disability.
So I always wonder, as you're speaking, Andrea, there's things that parents can do at home to help kids be more successful in school. Do schools provide that information, and can parents ask for it? I always think about this. I mean, what I observe when I have attended PPTs with clients or just in different situations, it seems like the school's super careful not to say to parents, you might want to have the TV off in the evening so they're doing homework in a more quiet environment, or you might want to have more regular routines, or look at how much screen time we're using, or whatever. It seems like schools are very careful about not making recommendations. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I think that's really dependent on the school and the staff you're dealing with. I have been at team meetings where people have been very, very vocal about, these are things you could try with a regular, talk to your child about where they're doing their homework. Do you think maybe, watching movies till 11 o'clock at night on a school night, that may not be a good choice for your child because they're coming to school and they're falling asleep during first period. So I think it depends on, that one goes, I think, back to relationships. If the team feels like they have that kind of relationship with you, I think that sometimes educators worry that they may be overstepping their bounds and telling a parent how to parent. And I think that there is that difference between interfering with someone's parenting styles and having a conversation with them about, after all the years I've been doing this and all the children I've known and families I've known, some of these things work really well, which is not telling a parent what to do, but it's offering them some suggestions as to how they might want to handle something. But I think that when a parent is in Connecticut, they're called planning and placement team meetings, PPTs, IEP meetings. When a parent is there, sometimes depending on how everybody's gone into that meeting and the sort of the vibe in the room, staff may or may not be feel comfortable making suggestions. But there's nothing wrong with the parent saying, can you give me some suggestions? I really would like to improve how the amount of sleep my child is getting. What are some suggestions?
And I want to say that, not all educators are trained in parenting approaches. So some educators will know some evidence-based parenting approaches, but many will give some ideas based on their experience and their personal experience and what they've heard from other parents. But I want to say that in these times, in these complex post-pandemic times, it's really important for parents to seek support, to not think that you can solve this yourself. I mean, just in general, especially when you're concerned about your child's performance in school and the school hasn't identified any specific educational or, social emotional disabilities. Ask for help, ask the school, ask your pediatrician, ask, email solutions@peaceandhomeparenting.com. Parenting right now is very challenging, and parents deserve support, as do educators. And I just want to say that we are hearing from educators and child care center directors and staff that parents are bullying teachers in a lot of settings. And by that, I mean speaking disrespectfully, blaming without a lot of information, and just speaking in ways they'd never want to hear their kids speaking. And I just want to remind us all that we're all constantly reconfiguring how we're doing things, both at home and in schools, to accommodate the many changes that are happening. And both parents and teachers are under a lot of stress. So I want to encourage us all to reach for as civil and positive communications as we can. Andrea, this has been awesome. I learned a lot of things today. Especially I want to talk more about executive function. And I want to remind you all again, reach out to us at solutions@peaceathomeparenting.com. This is your last chance to raise your hand or send us a chat. And we'll catch it if we can. And make sure that you check in with us at peaceathomeparenting.com and just look at our calendar. When you get to our website, look at our calendar. You'll see Andrea and a lot of other amazing teachers sharing their expertise with parents. Andrea, do you have any last observations or comments that you'd like to make before we go?
Well, just to piggyback on what you said, Ruth, I think it really, I mentioned relationships. I think it always comes full circle back to that. So, and I'm thinking my grandmother used to use the old adage, you catch more flies with honey, that really partnering with educators, partnering with childcare providers, and remembering that they're human beings too. And I don't know anybody who went into the field of education or childcare that didn't do it because they want to do it because they want to help children and families. So I would try to keep that in the front of your mind as you're having conversations, even if you're really frustrated. And there's nothing wrong with starting out a conversation with, I'm really frustrated about blah, blah, blah. Can we talk about it? And really being willing to have that dialogue instead of just being incredibly upset and possibly lashing out at somebody who is also very stressed.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Andrea. I want to thank everybody for being here today. We're Peace at Home Parenting Solutions, and we would love to hear from you. Check out our schedule. We also have available private one-on-one consultations. Andrea is one of those people that can provide a consultation for you. And just get in touch with us at solutions@peaceathomeparenting.com. Thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, Andrea.